मैं कुछ जब मैं all on what एक फिर एप्पल का है ये
आपका सेपरेट थोड़ा और प्रमोट करने मेरा स्कोर का हमारा बासमती रेटिंग और सेपरेट और ये तो ये टैक्स पहले से GI टैक्स अप्रोन रेड राइस
Honorable Minister for External Affairs, Dr. Jaishankar ji, Minister of Education, Shri Dharmendra Pradhan ji, Lieutenant Governor Manoj Sinha ji, Additional Chief Secretary Jammu and Kashmir, Mr. Atal Dallu, our friend and President ICCR, Dr. Sahasrabuddhe, the dynamic Vice Chancellor of the SKUAST-Kashmir, Dr. Nazir Ganai, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I think when I was hearing all these speakers right now, the first thought came to me that this is indeed an auspicious occasion because we are celebrating this evening and celebrating ourselves for more than one reason. We are celebrating India's growth story as has been retreated time and again once after the other by all these speakers before me. We are at the same time also celebrating the renaissance that we are witnessing in Jammu and Kashmir. We are also celebrating the quantum jump in India's agriculture sector. And last but not the least, we are also celebrating the unexplored agri-tech startup avenue of Jammu and Kashmir. And when we talk of the growth story, as was being said by Professor Nazir, also by Mr. Dullu, and I think we take pride in saying that we are now number 5th in economy. But what is more important than that, and I'm sure which is going to give you more sense of pride, is that we have actually overtaken the United Kingdom, the country who ruled over us for 200 years. And therefore, with India as the fastest growing economy of the world today, it also gives us a huge degree of self-esteem, both domestically as well as in the international fora. And when we say so, it's not that we say, the statistics say so, the world is saying so. For example, in the Global Innovation Index, we have jumped 41 places from 81 to 40. In the startup ecosystem, we are rated as number 3, having started much later. We hardly had about 350 startups in this country before 2014. It was only after Prime Minister Modi, in his Independence Day address, said, "Startup India, stand up India." Many of us didn't know what it meant at all. But look now, today we have more than 94,000 startups, more than 100 unicorns in a country which didn't know what a unicorn means and what is the spelling of unicorn. So this is indeed something to celebrate. At the same time, we are also celebrating the new national education policy as the theme of this evening's program indicates. NEP 2020. I've been associated also with the education sector for almost quarter of a century. And I always realize that this is something which must have happened much earlier. I don't know why we had to wait for 70 long years. Even the nomenclature was misplaced. It was called HRD ministry. HRD in corporate sector has absolutely different connotations. So thanks to Prime Minister Modi, we have sitting beside us the Education Minister of India, not the HRD Minister. And we were by default inadvertently following an education policy which created a huge, huge chunk of population which came to be known as educated unemployed, who are sitting outside Dharna and the secretariats everywhere. We were not creating employable youth, we were creating unemployed educated or educated unemployable. We had linked it to the degree. Just about 4 or 5 years back, we had the Vice Chancellor of Cambridge University here in Delhi. He happens to be a medico. He's a former professor of microbiology, because in the United Kingdom, the professors and the lawyers, they do not retire. They are allowed to continue as long as their faculties allow. So being a medico, he's fond of me, he calls for me. So he said, Doc, I must compliment you. If I didn't have students from India, my PhDs would be closed. So when he left the room, I asked the person sitting next to me, I said, was it a compliment or otherwise? He said, what do you mean? I said, because the grand old gentleman does not know that in his country, a boy or a girl would come in for a PhD only if he or she has decided to devote the rest of his or her life to that stream, end up doing some research, reaching somewhere, leaving some legacy for the future researchers. Here I come for a trophy. I acquire a degree for biotechnology and go on to become a computer manager. And both ways a win-win situation. My boss tells his companions in the morning walk, look, I have employed a PhD. And my spouse is happy that I have a fat pay packet. So this NEP 2020 has corrected that anomaly. We have the exit entry provision. You can quit, come back. If your mind is not into what you have sought to do, if you realize your aptitude is different, you can have a varied combination of subjects. And the most glaring example, I think, is the right forum here to point out. Otherwise, what was happening? You would take up science subjects, maybe to become a doctor. You would not make it after class 12. Then you have no option but to do a BSc in biosciences. You would do that. After that, you would appear for civil services, try your luck in civil service or JKS, whatever. You couldn't make it. Then you had no option. You would go in for post-graduation, MSc or whatever. If you didn't, go in for PhD. And finally end up becoming a scientist in SKUAST. So the institution which deserves the best of the lot would get the leftovers. It doesn't sound very pleasant, but this was exactly what was happening. And this anomaly is sought to be created. So now Professor Nazir would be getting the best of the talent which has its aptitude and heart in research, science, technology, innovation, not the ones who couldn't make it to the medical school, couldn't make it to civil services, couldn't make it to another avenue, and then landed up there. So that is something to celebrate. And then as far as the agriculture sector is concerned, I think technology was there available in the world. It was only after the push given by Prime Minister Modi that we are now into a world of agri-tech technology, agri-tech startups. In the context of Jammu and Kashmir, because as students of science, we have been taught not to deviate from theme and also speak with evidence. In the context of Jammu and Kashmir, I think what is most significant is, which we are still not able to realize, the sooner we do so, better it would be, that in the next 25 years, which the Prime Minister keeps calling as Amrit Kal, we have a very critical role to play. Because have you ever thought how we would reach that pedestal in 25 years? I mean, it sounds good, it sounds flattering saying so. But have you done a scientific indices of that? Where is that value addition going to come? Because when the entire resources get exhausted, the saturation points already reached from our western resources, from our southern resources, we would then be looking for the unexplored resources. And where are the unexplored resources? Unexplored resources in the Himalayas and unexplored resources in India's coastline, oceans, which never received the priority. It was only Prime Minister Modi twice consecutively in his Independence Day address referred to deep sea mission. Because we have a 7,500 kilometer long coastal line. We have an ocean called Indian Ocean, named after the country. The other day I was telling some friends from Australia, I said, you come from a country which is Australia, you come from an island which is Australia, you come from a continent which is Australia, but your ocean is not known as Australia. But my ocean known as Indian Ocean because my ancestors could see the huge wealth lying inside, which has remained undiscovered. So when the minerals, the metals, the living, non-living resources, which are going to be a subject of research in future agriculture universities like SKUAST, is what is going to give value addition to the India's future economy in the next 2 decades. And secondly is the Himalayas. And I think, though it should have been said much earlier, but next time Professor Nazir would add that, include that in his address. Jammu Kashmir is the birthplace of Aroma Mission. And the Purple Revolution of India, हिंदी में जैसे कहते हैं बैंगनी क्रांति, उसका जन्म जम्मू कश्मीर से हुआ. And where else to celebrate this but in a platform arranged by the Agriculture University. This is so deeply connected with agriculture. And that is the new avenue of economy. That is also the new avenue of agri-tech startups. Unfortunately, when we talk of startups, our minds have got stuck in IT. Because this movement started from Karnataka, this movement started from Andhra, which were the hubs of IT. But that's not so. No two words in English mean the same. You may not be a student of science, but you could be a good innovator. You could be a good agriculturist without being a graduate of science. And there is where universities like Scott will have to play an active role to nurture, to cultivate, to groom agri-tech startups. And those who have taken to it, the lavender entrepreneurship, which started from Gulmarg and we started from Bhadrawa, the two places, Gulmarg was the first, they are into lakhs now. I wish sometime we could do some kind of a showcasing of those success stories. We have at least 3 or 4 B.Tech boys who left their corporate job from Bangalore. They have taken to lavender entrepreneurship in Jammu and Kashmir. We are hardly celebrating that. I think they deserve to, because that will inspire our youth. And that will also solve the problem of livelihood. Because that Sarkari Naukri mindset which has got stuck into us will be got over when we find a more lucrative source of income. The other part is the dairy sector. Professor Ganai was telling you, you have 6 startups. I'll borrow or pilfer some of his credit by saying that I too have a contribution, because BIREC from the Department of Biotechnology, which I looked after, also has contributed to that. Similarly, through SKUAST, we at the Department of Biotechnology is also catering to certain dairy startups. We have a huge potential of dairy sector, dairy economy. We have 2 boys B.Tech, 1 boy MBA. All the 3 quit their job from Karnataka. They are back to Jammu and Kashmir. The other agriculture achievement, which I think is hardly being reported because the media doesn't find it fascinating, unless, if I abuse someone that makes news, and by the time the program is over, they'll reach him and ask him, how do you feel being abused? So this doesn't make news. But Jammu and Kashmir is having the first ever cannabis project, which is being routed through CSIR, through IIIM. Cannabis is going to, this is what is going to add quantum value to your economy, because cannabis is otherwise a drug abuse substance. It's not allowed for cultivation. After a lot of effort, we got permission from Government of India. We have acquired a land which was done through IIIM, where its cultivation is being done. The funds required were quite heavy, so we have collaborated with a French company. And in the process of developing it, we would be then able to produce drugs which would be mainly useful for pain relief, like in diabetic neuropathies, like in cancers. And these drugs could be of export quality. Because Jammu Kashmir has a history of herbal drugs. Unfortunately, that's not being discussed today, I know why. But we have, that is our agriculture richness. I don't know how many in this room know that mint, which is relished all over the world, was developed in Jammu and Kashmir. It was Sir Ramnath Chopra, who is known as the father of pharmacology in India. He superannuated from a laboratory in Kolkata way back in 1941 or 42. He was brought in by the then Maharaja to Jammu to set up the first laboratory called Drug Research Laboratory, which became one of the first laboratories of CSIR. We have 37 such laboratories. This Drug Research Laboratory, now known as IIM, and the National Physical Laboratory of Delhi were the first two. And the mint he developed in Jammu and Kashmir. Later on, he was transferred to Lucknow, and marketing happened in 1970. So what I'm trying to say is that we have the advantage of having a huge, huge legacy of agriculture economy in this territory. And with the kind of startup movement which we has now taken place under Prime Minister Modi, we have the opportunity to become the torch bearers of agri-tech startups. And for that, we need to create sensitization among the youth, among the stockholders. First of all, we have to tell them, we have to make them understand. The agri-tech startup today is not the Kisan of yesteryear, not the Do Bhiga Zameen Var Raisani. He is the one who sits on the computer, switches on the button. The drone does the irrigation. The drone does the pesticide. The drone does the manure. And with all the other soil health card and other avenues at his avenue, he is at much ease. With artificial intelligence, we can even measure the number of drops required for irrigating an agricultural product. But now the question is, are we using all that technology which we have? We have this available in India, because I am related to 6 or 7 departments which are dealing with startups and the science innovation startups. And we are very happy, willing to provide it. We have all the technologies. But the point is that there are 2 sections of people amongst us. One is who know that they don't know. So they'll come asking. The other is those who don't know that they don't know. So now the challenge is to reach out to those who don't know that they don't know, and they make them realize that if you make this, the lavender startup has picked up in such a way that a small, and we are providing all the support from the government side, through SKUAST, through the Department of Biotechnology, through CSIR, right from hand-holding to funding to taking it up to the market, and even a small bottle of perfume is costing 15,000. So they are into lakhs now, which is much, much, much more lucrative than any salaried job can be offered anywhere. So I think the success and the future ascent of this institutional work that has been talked about in the last few minutes would depend on how best we can make use of the advantages available to us, and how best we connect it to the age group of 30s and 40s who have the opportunity to work for the next 20, 25 years, so that when India turns 100 and 2047, they would have the pride to say, look here, I am the architect of Century India, and it was Professor Ganai who was the person responsible for my capacity building. If that is the ultimate goal, we would have achieved the objective of this evening's ceremony. Thank you very much.